Why don't you start by telling us why you think it's important for white people to have a homeland?
Well, I could answer that with a question. Why is it important that you have a room of your own or a house of your own? And the answer is that people want to have a place where they can be themselves. If you are living in a family and you've got, four brothers and sisters and you don't have a room of your own, you lack privacy. You lack a place where you can go and do your own thing, where you can do your homework, where you can think about your life, where you can draw pictures, whatever, read a book, whatever interests you, play video games. If you don't have that, then it's harder to be yourself. If you don't have a home, it's hard to live your life. And the same is true with the homeland. There are distinct peoples in the world. They are distinguished by race, language, culture. All kinds of historical contingencies go into the mix of distinguishing people, say, in France versus the Germans, versus the Spaniards, versus the Belgians, and so forth. These historical contingencies matter. People with even slight differences of religion often end up having battles with one another. Terrible wars have been fought over minor differences in things like religion. And so the best way to ensure that people can peacefully develop and live according to their own nature, their own inclinations, is to give them the maximum amount of free space. And for distinct peoples, that means a homeland of their own. Whereas you find that in multicultural societies, where you've got many different kinds of peoples who have to live together under the same political system, in basically some sort of civic equality, got the same laws, the same government, the same space, you're going to find that the laws and government and customs of that system are not going to sit well with some of the people in it. You're going to find that if you've got a neighborhood where you've got Chinese people and white people and blacks, that they're going to have different attitudes towards cleanliness, punctuality, noise, and things like that. And that these things will cause conflict if they're constantly forced to live together. And the only real way of avoiding that conflict is to hope that over time all these distinct identities are somehow worn away. Right? That everything becomes homogenized, which really means least common denominatorized, because you can't really homogenize upwards, right? It never works that way. No one sheds an inferior backwards folk culture for a high culture. That's just too hard for people. People can't be equalized upwards, and so equality always is equalizing downwards to the least common denominator. And that's not a vision of utopia that I want. There are a lot of leftists who say, we will have no more racial strife when everybody becomes brown. And it's like, wait a second, what about diversity, right? Is this your vision of utopia? Everybody has to lose their distinct identity so they can get along and not fight? Wouldn't it be much better if people could survive with their differences intact? And the way that people can survive with their differences intact is to create homelands of their own. And fortunately, there are lots of homelands like this that already exist. It's not a pipe dream. Poland is a homogeneously Polish society. Hungary is almost overwhelmingly Hungarian. France used to be overwhelmingly French. Now they've got a problem. They've been bringing in non-French people for a long, long time. But those trends can be reversed, and so forth. So we have working homelands that have been defaced by multiculturalism. We have other social orders that are quasi-imperial, where you've got one group that's basically lording it over other ethnic groups. Those can be dealt with in a number of ways. One is to simply divide the country up. This is what would work best probably in a place like Belgium, where the French and Flemish-speaking and small German-speaking groups just don't get along with one another. Or you could have a situation like you have in Switzerland, where you've got 4 different ethnic groups, but they live fairly amicably because they've just devolved a lot of power to local levels. And so they don't feel like they're being forced to accept alien ways of life, at least when they're in their own spheres. So there are ways of handling these things. The goal for me, the most important goals for politics are really twofold. One is to find ways of conflict resolution. But peace is not an end in itself. Peace is basically a means to allow people to flourish. And that means individuals, and it also means groups. We want to create a world in which conflict is minimized and in which different groups have the capacity to live peacefully with one another, as peacefully as possible, right, according to their own interests, according to their own culture, their own genius, their own individual destiny, and so forth. So that's why I'm a white nationalist. A white nationalist just means that I want to see ethnic self-determination for all white peoples. And beyond that, I'm just an ethno-nationalist because I think this is a universally valid idea. I think the world would be better off if there's a Japan for the Japanese and a Korea or two for the Koreans, and so forth. It's not just a white thing, but being a white person, I think it's especially important. And also, whites, unlike all the other ethnic groups in the world, are being threatened with extinction. We have below replacement birth rates in all of our societies now, coupled with race replacement immigration. We are bringing in people who breed faster than us and are openly vowing that they're going to take away our societies. We have Mexicans in the Southwest who say that they want to take over the Southwest and make it Mexico. Then they'll, of course, want to leave because it'll be a pigsty. We've got Muslims in Europe who want to extend the caliphate and create a greater Islamic ummah. That's what they want to do. So it wouldn't be so bad if we were like the Japanese. They have a very crowded society. They've got below replacement birth rates. Their population will decline. But they don't have race replacement immigration, and so they're safe, right? It'll bottom out at a certain point, and there'll always be a Japan if they keep their policies intact. If we keep our policies in place in the West, there will not be a France or an England or a United States or a Canada. These countries will be destroyed because they are not reproducing themselves, and they are bringing in fast breeding and hostile non-European populations that will replace them in their own homelands.